exciting. All right, so hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today to discuss and celebrate this amazing and significant research. My name is Dr. Katy Duffy-Sherr, and I'm thrilled to introduce Dr. Kristin Vogel-Campbell, a colleague and dear friend. A round of applause. So I'm going to go through her very significant history because she has done so much. So Dr. Vogel-Campbell currently serves as the coordinator of special education for the San Mateo Foster City School District. She's held various roles in education, including paraeducator, special day class teacher, resource specialist, program specialist, and director of student services and special education. She's a native New Yorker and called San Francisco her home since 2006, which was by far the better choice, so thank you. But before relocating here, you earned your bachelor's degree from Hunter's College, City University of New York, and her master's in education from New York University. And she has since earned credentials in teaching and administration from Sacramento State and CSU East Bay. She earned her doctorate from CSU East Bay in 2021, where I had the pleasure of meeting her and spending many hours researching and writing with her over the internet. We became very good friends over Zoom, I would say.
Yeah.
So Dr. Vogel-Campbell's work focuses on the experiences of families with children who receive special education services. Her humanizing research approach is based on narrative inquiry and centering the perspective of experts, the families. She's presented locally, nationally, internationally, and has discussed the intersection of disability and identities. She also serves on the advisory board of the San Mateo County Pride Center. Partnering with culturally and linguistically diverse families in special education is her very first book, and it is published by Rowman and Littlefield in December of 23. Today, I'm going to guide us through a conversation about your amazing work and research, and I'm going to pick your mind a little bit, give you some time to share your experience, your research. So yeah, here we go. Woo-woo. Okay, so first of all, I love how your research is dedicated to culturally and linguistically diverse families, or CLD, as I'll refer to it, within special education. Why were you drawn to this particular section of education?
So my why I went into special education was very personal. After finishing my undergrad, was right around the same time that my nephew was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and seeing the challenges, but also how easy it was for my brother and his then wife to get services for their son. They white, middle class, fairly resourced family in New Jersey, and working in Chinatown and the Head Start, seeing that not all families had those same amount of privileges. That's kind of what drew me into special education. If I didn't go into special education, I would have gone into social work, so also very similar, but very, very different.
Yeah.
But kind of on that same helping path.
Yeah.
And then, just moving out to California, working in San Francisco, San Mateo, Alameda counties, knowing that so many families are coming to us with a lot of gifts and privileges that we don't necessarily see in the school system, and they sometimes have difficulty navigating the systems if they are coming to us speaking a language other than English, if they're undocumented, if it's a single parent household or non-traditional family structure, but the nuclear family is just a relatively new concept, but multi-generational families where grandmas or aunties are the caretakers. They really didn't have that same advantage or the same playing field as families that had more resources. So sure. That's kind of what drew me into that. Yeah.
Amazing. I appreciate how your book is really approachable and easy to read and not so highbrow.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And which is really uncommon for a text about research. How do you hope that your text will be used?
Yeah, that was absolutely intentional.
Yeah.
You know, going through a doctoral program, there's so many pieces of research that I think are really important, but it's difficult for someone who has like a high level of education to read it and understand it. And I didn't really want something that would just kind of like sit on a shelf. I wanted it to be more practical, and like my intention is for, you know, teachers and, you know, administrators and like anyone that's involved in like education or special education to be able to pick this up and not have to like focus too hard on like trying to understand like word structure,
Right.
and just like keeping it real, because that's really the ultimate goal.
How do you make change without
Right.
sharing the information?
Right.
And if the information is not accessible,
Right.
they're searching.
I could use very complicated words and like go into like deep theoretical like breakdowns, but you know, I don't want someone's eyes glazing over when I'm reading my work. So that was kind of the purpose of it. And it's something that I enjoyed writing.
Yeah.
And I would enjoy reading it if I hadn't written it.
Uh-huh. I want to share that I brought your book to a professional development yesterday at my work and showed it to my principal and my director of special ed, and we're going to create a book club.
Oh.
And we're going to read
Oh,
it.
how cool.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
so
So I
cool.
just wanted to share
Yeah,
that with you.
that's the point. Like
Yes.
that's like
Yeah.
people that are already working in schools, people that are earning their teaching credentials, you know, or just anyone that's like interested in learning about it. Like that's the goal. So mission
Yeah.
accomplished.
Okay. Another one of my favorite elements of your text is your ability to humanize the participants.
Mm-hmm.
While reading, I was able to envision each family, each student, and picture their experiences. Why did you decide to provide such detailed backstories on each family?
I think that just goes back to wanting folks who are reading to really understand the stories and to feel that like tug of emotion, like in reading, you know, backstories and like things that have happened that, you know, shouldn't have happened if, you know, our systems were like set up to serve everybody. So I wanted it to be emotional, and a really critical way to do that is to, you know, bring people into parents' world and to kind of honor and recognize the struggles and like all of the work that they put into like supporting their child. I think it's very easy to just kind of sugarcoat everything and say like things are great, things are wonderful, but like in reality, like that's not the case. So like humanizing the research, like putting faces and visuals to the folks that are like represented in the research, like that's critical, because so many times like our students and our families are just a number or a name, and that doesn't really serve us in education to make those personal connections.
While completing your research, were there any stories or experience from the families that you collaborated with that made you take pause or take breath? Is there a particular memory that you keep that has forever changed how you support the families that you work with?
Yeah, I always go back to like this one particular instance that's not in the book, but it's something that like struck me really deeply, and I think has changed the way that I look at like how we set up meetings, and like especially like language interpretation for families. So a couple of years ago, I think right before the pandemic, we had a kiddo come in as a 5th grader, and his dad, they came to the area from Guatemala. They were, you know, detained. Dad was separated from his son for quite some time, and the boy came to us with like some pretty like significant like physical like disabilities that like we, you know, advised them to go see a doctor. Like we believed that there was cerebral palsy there, and like during his like journey to America, like he wasn't in school, he hadn't seen the doctor, so, while we were getting all of those assessments and like school-based eligibility set up, the interpreter got it really, really wrong in one meeting. And this, for me, was, okay, we need to make sure that our interpreters like have the language so that they can like accurately translate things. When a physical therapist like recommended that the kid wear, and this is like very detailed, the kid wear like AFOs, so kind of like braces.
Yeah.
The interpreter took that and then interpreted it to the parent, the father, where the father thought that the school team was recommending that his child's leg be amputated. And we had a second meeting like 2 weeks later, and he had been holding on to that the entire time. We had a different interpreter, and like he brought it up, and like we were just in shock, and like I'm getting like goosebumps thinking about it right now. And it's just like we could not have done worse for that family. And like the fact that like that dad had to sit with that for like 2 weeks, like that made me take pause.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And so like now, whenever we have interpretation, we make sure that the interpreter like has an understanding of like very like specific terms in the assessments, like as much as possible.
Right. Give them the heads up of like, we're gonna be talking about these specific things. Maybe you need to look up the words before the meeting.
And that also like was one of the main catalysts for me like wanting to like improve my Spanish as well, so that I can also like member check where I'm like, that doesn't really sound right. And that's happened a couple of times where I'm like, I don't think that the interpreter is sharing with the family like what we exactly said. I don't have the skills to be able to like say it myself, but I'm just like, wait, can you like read this and like say that again? So yeah. But yeah, that definitely like, that was a really unfortunate, like really sad thing that happened.
But I can see how that would really stick with you and
For sure.
really guide the way that you now support families. So.
And he's in 8th grade now, and he's a lovely like young man. He's going to high school, so whenever like kids I work with go to high school, it's just, oh my gosh, I knew you since you were a baby, and now you're going to high school. It's really kind of it's delightful.
I agree. As an educator, I immediately appreciated how you included ways to support families that I could start doing tomorrow. Things that I could just literally, I'm gonna change that, I could do that tomorrow with my families. So based on your research, what are the top 3 things that you suggest educators can do tomorrow to partner with their families?
I think the most important thing is to never assume, and presuming competence, presuming that your families know their child best, like they're the experts. I don't like it when like I'm in a meeting and a school staff member, uses, well, we're the professionals, we're the experts, and it's like, no, you have the degree, but at the end of the day, like the parent knows their child best. So I think, making sure that whatever information you can provide families, like you do, and like proactively, so ahead of the time that you're meeting with them. And I think also, sometimes, for kids and parents that, that are in special education, sometimes the only time that like a parent gets a phone call from the school or the teacher is when the kid had a rough day or the kid had a challenging day. But like calling the families like when the kid had an amazing day, or even when the kid had like a typical day, it's like, yeah, they did their work, they participated, they had a great time. And I think that helps kind of establish trust, because if you're only hearing from a person when they're gonna give you bad news, your immediate reaction is to put your guard up. And like a parent going into a meeting with their guard up, like they're already feeling tense and nervous. So that's number 2. And then number 3, I would just say like, ask questions. Ask questions, like at the beginning of the year, like reach out to families and just be like, hey, like what would you like me to know about your kid? And I feel like that's really important. And if that means that like we have to get an interpreter to have those conversations, like just because a parent doesn't speak English, like they deserve that conversation too. And I think, you know, that's an extra step for us to take. Learning simple greetings in a family's home language is also really important. So I gave you 4.
That's fine. No one's counting, it's fine.
Yeah.
But those are all great, like,
Yeah.
those are easily accomplished.
Yep. They don't cost anything.
Nope, they don't cost anything, and there are systematic changes that have to happen.
Yep.
Of course, but you're giving us ideas that, while we're working on those systems, we can do things today.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that. Okay. This was a question we got from before
Yeah.
the event. What are 2 things that you suggest school districts? So we talked about educators. What are 2 things you suggest school districts can do to change the way they support families?
Yeah. And this is where we come into like the more like higher like system stuff and things that are going to cost money, but like we absolutely need to do that. I think the first thing that I would like encourage school districts to do is, so procedural safeguards. So like for those of you not in special education, there's a 19-page document that outlines parent rights and student rights that parents are handed at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah.
And they're like, here you go, do you have any questions? Like, yeah, like, you know, most parents are gonna be like, I don't have any questions right now. But again, that doesn't set them up to like fully be able to participate. I think what school districts need to do is they need to put something into place where there is a parent information night where they go over what all of those rights are.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're just handing them that 19-page piece of paper, we're not really telling them that we care that they know what their rights are.
No.
And I know that that's not the case. So there needs to be something like translated, obviously, in, you know, Spanish or what other language like the school district serves. So that's number 1. And then I think number 2 is school districts are not legally obligated to provide translated copies of documents before the meeting. And one of the reasons why is because, well, it's a draft, and if we translate a draft, then we're gonna have to translate the final version, and that costs a lot of money. Well, yeah, I get it, but like handing a Spanish-speaking parent an English draft, like it means nothing. So, you know, that means a lot. School psychs, they're gonna have to have like their reports done earlier so they can get translated. So there's implications on that, like lightening caseloads. Same thing with like teachers and like SLPs, but translated documents need to be there like at the beginning.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, we're not really like holding that promise for families.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, costing a lot of money, but it can be found.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more of those systematic changes.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Let's see. So this is a good leading statement. I was struck by your description of equity versus the legal requirements when discussing accessibility for CLD families or families within special education. Can you share a few examples from your research of how families were provided what was required, but it wasn't as equitable as it could have been?
Yeah. I think again, like being provided the draft like right at the beginning of the meeting.
Right.
Parents can and should ask for like drafts before the meeting to review. Again, it's not a legal requirement, which is kind of bonkers to me. But that's something that should be in place. So there's best practices, which are kind of like what we are legally obligated to do. And I feel like we need to move beyond that to like better practices. So yeah, so drafts for sure. And then I think just, you know, stopping and pausing during meetings and asking parents if they have any questions, if what staff members are saying resonate with them, like, does this sound like your child? And also asking them like, what do you see at home, and like making those connections.
Yeah.
Because we know that, sometimes, students act differently in school and at home. There's different like structure and different like routines, but a lot of what happens at home can inform how we can do better at school. And that came up a couple of times in my research, but that should also kind of be like a norm.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah. There aren't any real requirements during the meeting. Maybe at the beginning, when you're asking a parent,
Yes.
like, well, what are their strengths and preferences at home?
Yeah.
But
Do
there's
you have any concerns?
right,
Yeah.
but there's no like specific amount of times we're supposed to ask, or so. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. I would caution like stopping and checking for understanding, stopping and asking, do you have any questions, like more frequently than not.
Yeah. I mean, you can see it on people's faces when they don't understand.
Yep.
And so we should notice.
Yep.
And do something with that. Just body language.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. In completing your research, was there anything that you would change or add to?
Well, I think one of the things that I wished I had the opportunity to do was to, like specifically like with the research for the book and the dissertation, was to have had the opportunity to have these dialogues in person. Obviously, COVID happened, we weren't able to do that, so all of the interviews and dialogues that I had with families took place on Zoom. And you're not able to pick up as much on like nonverbal language and like body posture. When you're, in person, like you're able to do that a lot more. So that I couldn't have changed, but I feel like if I were to go through this again, I'm not doing another doctorate, but but going through another cycle of like research and like continuing research, like I would absolutely like, if parents felt comfortable to do that in person. Yeah, I think that, that's really the number one thing that I wish I could have done differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had another question from an audience member that we got prior to the event.
Yeah.
The question is from a special needs philanthropist born with autism and a local celebrity chef. They would like to know what your message is for the disability community to help others in need as an activist.
Yeah. Well, I think it's super important, and like, I can answer it like speaking to you because we had a chance to like chat beforehand. I think, knowing, finding community and finding like folks that that have the same wishes and aspirations and the same goals. There are so many folks in the disabled like activist community in like the Bay Area. Like San Francisco State, like they have the Longmore Institute on Disability, they're fantastic. And then there are a lot of folks in Oakland, so I think it's like finding your community, finding people who have like the same vision, and realizing that like you're not doing it alone, and that like finding those like allies will be so much like easier in the end. And during the pandemic, like doing this work, and I felt like I was in a silo because I wasn't seeing anybody. I was able to like, you were absolutely an ally and someone that I could like vent to. So I think it's finding your folks and like, people that you can trust, and just like keep doing the good work.
Yeah. Right. What's next on the horizon for Dr. Kristin Vogel-Campbell? What's happening now?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are like happening now. I'm looking for a new role to kind of take on in the next like 6 months or so. I'm like transitioning out of my current role, so looking to see like what options are out there. Continuing to do research and like working directly with families.
Yeah.
I don't have anything like of this like length and size kind of plan. I'm writing a chapter for a book that I think is going to be published either later this year or next year about just relationships and like building and sustaining relationships with families. So it's another story from a family that wasn't highlighted in this book, but it's just kind of like their journey, and then like my reflection on like what as educators we can do. So it's turning the lens a little bit more inward, which is challenging because we are our own worst critic, but I think the reflection piece is something that is absolutely necessary. And going to AERA next month in Philadelphia, like presenting on a couple of things, and then my publisher has a booth at the exhibitor hall, so I'm gonna get to do like one of those like schmoozy things, so that'll be fun also. I don't think it involves like a conversation.
No, I didn't mean that, but.
No, but that's okay.
Practice your signature.
I can practice my signature with the Sharpie. But someone asked me to like sign something the other day, and they were like, oh, you have such a really nice signature. Like most people just like scribble, and I'm like, no, I have a very precise signature because like being in special education, like you're signing things all the time.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm like, I am not going to just like fake it and just do the doctor's signature. So it's very loopy and flowy.
I suggest you get stickers for your booth so people can wear, and then Sean can get a button like softball moms from Texas with your face on it.
Well, that's probably a good thing that Sean won't be there, because that would be super embarrassing. But I really like the idea about like stickers.
Yeah.
Like that'll be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, just continuing to like do work, and like some of it may be published, some of it won't. But yeah, it's exciting.
I love all of these things for
Yeah.
you. Well, I'm so excited we were able to explore your text a little more and hear your perspectives and ideas. I'm done with my questions. Do we want to open it up to the audience?
Yeah, if anyone else has any questions, like that would be great. I think we also like do have an audience of like mostly introverts, so it's all good.
If there aren't any questions, then it's also fine.
Yeah, it's absolutely okay.
Yeah. And we can do a round of applause. You're an amazing human, and I'm so excited we got to do this today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your knowledge and in the special needs world, ladies. And can we get a picture of you guys?
Yeah, we could
sure.
do that.
Love that.
Do it. I'm gonna get my camera on.
Do it.